So I have to start by saying that, in the sector, philanthropy, when people say, when you know one foundation, you know that foundation, and only that foundation. And only for a short time, because most probably that foundation is going through some kind of strategic planning and changing their goals. So that means that I'm not going to stand here and speak on behalf of other foundations. I'm just going to give you my perspective about what foundations such as mine, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, can do and is doing already on this space. And I will tell you a little bit about our own evolution of how we have gone from dealing with complex environmental problems and getting into the food space. So the first thing that I have to say is that we are dealing with truly one of the most wicked problems that you can imagine in the planet. And we got into it not because we were bored with the other problems we were dealing with, but because we realized that in order to solve the environmental problems that we started addressing 10 years ago won't go away unless we really deal with these food production systems and make them sustainable. I mean, we are very clear about that. So we went from, we're going from a strategy where we are investing a lot of money in erecting fences around parks in the Amazon to try to protect them from deforestation, to realizing that that is not going to be enough, that this wave of agricultural production is moving very fast, clearing vast amounts of land. So we are moving away from just focusing on protected areas, and a foundation like ours working on traditional conservation is now working on cattle intensification in the state of Mato Grosso, away from the primary forest that has all this wonderful biodiversity, and focusing on how we can produce more cows in rangeland in a sustainable way, but basically, as you're saying, Professor Preety, how to do it in a sustainable way. So for us, that basically has meant something that I will come back to why we're here, a path that has been very interesting for us as a foundation. First of all, foundations have all the choices in the world. In many ways, they are the least accountable institutions in the world because they don't have, like NGOs, constituencies. We have our endowment. We have our own decision-making processes. As long as we comply with tax law, we can do a lot of things on our own. But if you really want to solve problems of the magnitude of the food system, you cannot just pretend that you will do it on your own. So that's the first lesson. And that basically means that when you are trying to solve problems trying to find solutions, for the sustainability of food production, you have to deal with systems, and you have to deal with root causes, which is very different from dealing with technical fixes. In other words, maybe a vaccine for the amnesia that Patrick was referring to would have been the solution, instead of just vaccinate people so that they don't have this amnesia that makes them unaware of the costs. But that's not the way we're going to solve this one, Patrick, I'm afraid. It's going to have to be through a series of interventions at different levels by many different stakeholders through a process. And it sounds like heavy, but that's going to be difficult. This is a difficult problem. We need to start acknowledging that because we need to address the root causes. And that's not something that foundations are particularly good at. But I think that we have no choice. If we, as a foundation, and the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation are saying our commitment is to a healthy ecosystems in the planet, and don't address issues like food production and figure out how to solve some of these problems, we are doomed. So no matter how much we invest in protected areas, eventually they will disappear, and they are disappearing. For those of you who don't follow what happens with parks in the world, there is a trend of degazetting the parks to create space for more agricultural areas. So we need to deal with agriculture, we need to deal with food. Now, there's two ways of dealing with it. One is in a traditional individual action by each of the foundations. And there's a lot that individual foundations can do to work and help in this system, like supporting research, developing capacity of the organizations that are working on these issues, taking on risky projects that require innovation. So there's all kinds of things that we can do individually that can help move forward an agenda for sustainability. But I think that, like in the case of the parks in Brazil, that's not going to be sufficient. We, as foundations, need to figure out where are the points of leverage that we can activate to get the maximum possible action. And that's not going to happen if each of us as funders are finding their own points of entry and on their own trying to do something about it. What I have experienced in the last couple of years, both with the Global Alliance for the Future of Food and the Climate and Land Use Alliance, which are organizations of foundations that are coming together that are setting up strategies and common objectives, is that that's really the way to go. When you start leveraging and joining resources and getting more synergy, that's when action starts really happening. And so I think that there's a lot that foundations can do to address the issues that we've been discussing here. But I think the key is going to be collective impact. If we want to do it on our own, if we want to discover our own solution and guide it to ourselves, it's going to fail. It's going to have to be collective action. But for that, we're going to have to open up our minds, join forces, and move together.